Y'all do this for fun.
Boom! And we are live with another episode of the Brown Water Banter podcast. My name is Jared Seymour.
My name is Joey Cates.
It is Joey Cates. And we got another good episode lined up for you. DMR's back in the house, man. We have Jared and Jennifer here from, I got to read my notes, the Coastal Resource Management Office of the DMR. We're going to be talking about invasive species, permitting, the coastal preserves, a whole bunch of different topics. We're going to jump right into them. But before we do that, we have to thank the people that keep the lights on for us over here at the Brown Water Studio right out of the gate. Dr. Robbie Williams over at Southern Magnolia Smiles, man. If you're looking for a great local dentist, they are located right on Washington Avenue in Ocean Springs. You can look them up on the socials at Southern Magnolia Smiles on Facebook or Instagram. And when you're ready to book that consultation with them, you can give them a call at 228-215-1202. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, this is Taylor and Cox Law Firm. That's our buddy Tyler right there. They specialize in felonies, misdemeanors, DUI, family law, divorce, child custody. If you need somebody that's going to fight for you in the courtroom, give Taylor and Cox Law Firm a shout. 228-696-0111. And you can also look them up on Facebook as well. Just type in Taylor and Cox Law Firm. It'll come right up. It's January. It is the new year. Forever Young Men and Women's Health that's the business that can get you back into the gym for your New Year's resolution that you don't want to blow up right first month out of the year. They can do some, you book a consultation with them. They do some lab work on you. They look over your blood work. They see if you're vitamin deficient in anything, if you need hormone replacement therapy like testosterone, and they specialize in that testosterone replacement for both men and women. So you can take you and your lady friend and get back in the gym and get healthy.
Sweet.
He's been on the show before. Like I always try to say, go back and look that episode up. Kendrick breaks it down for us, goes through all the science behind everything they're doing over there. It's really cool, and it's always good to prioritize your health. So you can give them a shout at 228-363-6623. And then bringing up the rear for us is the 2025 Biloxi Boat Show that is going to be at the Mississippi Coast Coliseum Convention Center, February 14th through the 16th. That's Friday through Sunday. It's a really cool time. If you've never been, there's a ton of vendors, a ton of boat manufacturers, motors are going to be there. Like, gives you the opportunity in one-stop shop to look at all the different styles of boats, sizes. You can figure out, what kind of boat you want right next door to a different style of boat. Walk through both of them and make your decision. They've also got usually Keesler Federal's there, slinging loans. So you can get financed and pretty much buy it right there and walk out with it. So it's a really cool time. We'll be there set up with the Brownwater tent. We're going to be hosting some live events, like some guest speakers are going to be there, taking some Q&As on some different topics. We haven't booked those yet, but that will be there as well. It'll be a good time. So go check them out on Facebook. Look it up, Biloxi Boat Show. And you can get your tickets. I'm sure they're already on sale, right?
Oh, yeah. You go to the website and get them right now.
Yeah. So go check it out. It's a good family-friendly event. So nailed it. All right. I beat you again?
Yeah. Wait,
sweet.
just go ahead.
I love it. All right. So first, we want to thank y'all for being in the studio this evening, coming and joining with us. These DMR episodes are always super educational for us, I know, and the audience as well. We like to usually start out with, if you could just introduce yourself and then what you do in your office, or even, your office as a whole, kind of what do y'all manage and what are y'all in charge of? Because we've learned just in doing these episodes how many different departments that y'all have inside.
I had no idea.
Most people only understand or recognize like the law enforcement side, because that's who we interact with the most when we're out there on the water. So if you could just introduce yourself and let us know.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Excited about being here. My name's Jared Harris, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Coastal Resources Management. And inside the office of inside that office, we have two bureaus. We have the Bureau of Wetlands Permitting and the Bureau of Coastal Preserves. And then inside the Bureau of Coastal Preserves, we have our Coastal Preserves program. We have an invasive species program, and then we also have the beneficial use of dredge materials program. Wetland permitting is kind of self-explanatory. They do regulatory and then enforcement and compliance as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Wittman. I'm the director of the Office of Coastal Resources Management. So Jared and I kind of head up the whole team.
Y'all are Batman and Robin?
Yes, 100%.
So that was a lot. You said a mouthful there with all the different stuff that y'all do inside of that department. So let's start on this side of it, where you explaining the wetlands permitting, right? What specifically does that do? Is that for like people buying land, or is that different? I know, like when you buy commercial land, you have to go through wetlands permitting, right? That's not your office, or is that?
So we handle all kinds of different stuff with wetlands permitting. So residential property owners that want to put in docks, piers, do dredging, bulkheads, all of that.
Okay.
And then we're also going to review any wetland impacts in the 3 coastal counties. So we have to issue a coastal zone consistency statement to the Corps of Engineers. So we issue approximately 800 authorizations every year. And so that's everything from, your small piers and your dredging events to projects for expansion of a new industrial park or something like that. So there's, a wide gamut of things. We've recently gotten an online system, which has really helped out. So it's a whole lot easier for people to apply to do projects on their property.
Right.
And that's been helpful. That actually went live right around the time that COVID started. So we were able to actually continue.
You lucked up on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
I think my mom just put our pier back in Back Bay, and
Right.
it's an easier process for
Yeah.
sure right now with the online. But I wasn't aware that that fell underneath y'all. I think it was from the riprap bulkheads to the
Right.
wooden bulkheads.
I've heard
the
people that I know
pier,
personally
any of
talk
that
about
stuff.
having to, guys that live on the water and when they want to put a bulkhead in, or
Right.
different than I'm sure what your mom went through, having to deal with that aspect of it.
Right. And so there's all kinds of different stuff, but we've got, I guess we call agreements with the Corps in Mobile and Vicksburg District, because part of Mississippi Coast actually is located in the Vicksburg District, way over in Hancock County. And we can issue permits on their behalf. So those are regional general permits. So you just come in, it's kind of one-stop shop permitting. You don't have to deal with other federal regulatory resource agencies. But when you start getting into those larger coastal zone consistency type projects and really large dredging projects, that's when you kind of have to bring in those other agencies, and sometimes those can take a little bit longer.
I would think that office stays super busy.
Yeah.
What does it?
We're pretty busy.
Yeah. Probably one of the busier offices in DMR, huh? I mean, because people are always adding on stuff and building bridges and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
All
like
got to go
I said,
through you.
Yeah, like I said, we have about 800 authorizations a year.
Wow.
And we do pre-application meetings we also handle wetlands violations. So if somebody is filling something without a permit, or if they're going in and they're building and they don't have a permit to build, we get calls on that, and we visit every single, our staff, I won't say we,
Right.
our staff visits every single violation report that is submitted. And we also are able to do a site visit on every application that's submitted.
Wow. And it goes to you, the app. Who do y'all send out to make that decision on if it's good or not?
So our wetlands permitting staff, we've got a bureau director and a team lead, and then we've got a staff of 5 environmental natural resource specialists. So
And they go out there and they assess the situation. If
They
it's
assess the
good, they
situation.
stamp off, and if not,
they'll stamp off, they'll take measurements, they'll take photos, and then they will, if there's any requests for additional information, they'll work with the agents or the property owner on that, and then they'll submit the stuff, and our bureau director and our team lead review everything, and then those get sent out. We can usually get GPs out. That's a general permit that I was talking about in
Right.
30 to 45 days.
that's not
Okay.
bad.
Yeah. And, sometimes, this time of year when it's kind of slow, it's a great time to get it in. It's when it starts
Right.
warming up and everybody starts getting excited to get back
Right.
out on the water. Like, oh man, I really need to redeck this pier. April's tough.
Yeah.
April and May are really tough when it comes to stuff like that.
That's a good point you just brought up. Made me think of a question. So yeah, I can understand building a new bulkhead that didn't exist before, driving pylons and doing all that. But even to redeck a pier, you have to run it back through y'all. Is that did I hear that right?
So from the state's perspective, if you're staying in the same footprint,
Okay.
we're good. But if you're adding if you're adding a roof on an area that didn't, if you had an uncovered boat lift,
Gotcha.
then we would need to look at
shade
that
and
again.
all that
Right.
stuff.
It's-
Make sure it's not going to kill anything beneath it.
Right.
Okay.
There could be submerged aquatic vegetation or
Yep.
something like that.
Are all these permits the same length? Like when you file for one, do you get it? Do you have so many days, months, years to complete, or they're different times depending on what you're building?
So the general permits are renewed by the Corps of Engineers every 5 years. So right now, anything that we issue is going to be good through May of 2028.
Okay, so you got some time on
You've got
those.
some time. If it's one that we have to issue an individual certification on, those are good for 5 years, unless they are municipal projects, and those are good for 10. So
Right.
it kind of helps our municipalities when you talk about things where you have to get funding or contracting or things like that. Sometimes that can be a pretty lengthy process for them.
Okay. Okay.
What about wetlands like behind my house?
Mhm.
When my neighbor moved in on the other side, they were instructed they couldn't build because of actual wetlands on their property. Does that fall under y'all as well, or is that
Yes.
everything? Any kind of wetland plant that's found falls under you.
Absolutely. So that's what that coastal zone consistency. If it's non-tidal wetlands and you want to impact that, we have to review that as well. But we have an MOA with the Corps of Engineers. So all applications for any wetland impacts in coastal Mississippi come to the DMR.
Sweet.
And then we submit it out and send it to the Corps of Engineers, the Secretary of State's office, Fish and Wildlife Service, DEQ, and the other state, MDAH, so our cousin history. So all of those entities have an opportunity to review every project. And so we coordinate all of that.
Okay. So you explained that as kind of over here on its own thing. What was the other side of the umbrella that you were talking about? The other
bureau is the
Yeah.
Coastal Preserves Bureau.
Okay, Coastal Preserve. And what all falls underneath that one again?
So you have regular Coastal Preserve staff that maintain the public access and the trails on 5 of our coastal preserves. So you
Okay.
got Deer Island, Indian Point over here in Goshen. Then you got Bell's Ferry, Wachovia,
12X.
and 12 Oaks, which is in Ocean Springs, and that's a partnership because there is a house there, and we can't have structures on the property. So the land trust for the Mississippi Coastal Plain owns the house, but we own the land around it, and it's a beautiful trail, small trail right in the middle of Ocean Springs.
Okay, so like maintenance in it and keeping it up, that's part of y'all's department as well?
Yep.
Okay. And then what didn't you said the invasive species side?
There's an aquatic invasive species program and a beneficial use of dredge materials program.
All right, let's go to the dredge materials, huh? Or do you want
Yeah,
to
well, we can do either one of
well,
them.
we've got to get to all of them.
Yeah, dredge materials is a big thing. I guess that y'all were the ones who were in charge, the ones south of Deer Island, where they dredged that big trench on the south out of Deer Island, and you can still see it. Was that y'all?
So technically that was a core project.
Okay.
Following Katrina, there was some federal money that came down, and that program was called the MISSIP program, Mississippi Coastal Improvements Program. They did a big plan. And so the part of their goal was they got projects all across the coast, but in that specific program, they're trying to add the historical footprint back to Deer Island because it had been eroding away from so long.
Right.
I mean, the original size, I think it may have been from the 50s or
1850s.
1850s. Deer Island was probably 700 to 800 acres, and it was down to, I believe, about 400 acres at that time.
It was bad.
And then, they did the south side. They created that chenier or the sand berm from the Barrow area that you're talking about that you see. Then you got that lagoon that it created behind it. So they've pumped some dredge sediments from the federal, the access channel coming into Biloxi, and they'll put that in there to create marsh that'll go behind that berm. And then they also rebuilt the west end of Deer Island, put some rocks from some bridge material, and then they restored the coastal dune habitat on the west end.
That's prime time flounder spot too. Nobody go check it out.
So are y'all in charge of like permitting when you dredge, or what can be dredged, where it can be dredged? How does that work?
So dredging, the permitting for dredging goes through the permitting side of that bureau.
Okay.
So that's a separate thing. But the beneficial use program, so numbers are there's estimates that we lose probably about 200 acres of marsh per year in the state of Mississippi. And while compared to Louisiana, that's not a lot, but they've also got a lot more. I mean, for us, that's a lot of acreage to lose every year because marsh is what is the productive habitat. I mean, most things depend on the marsh. So the beneficial use program was started kind of as a partnership in the early 2000s with the Corps of Engineers. It was a site on the north side of Deer Island on that east end where you have that, the rock jetty that sticks out. All right. So that was the first site. Katrina obviously blew it out, and then they came back and restored that. And then the beneficial use program had kind of been growing since that point. And then they created in a partnership with a big dredging contractor that was doing some work at the port. They created we call it DIMR2. It was the next phase to the west. It tied in right into that DIMR1, and that was about 40 acres of habitat that's been restored at DIMR2 and DIMR1, probably 45 acres each. And so as far as the program was set up and as it kept growing in 2010, there was actually a state law that was passed. I call it the beneficial use law. So any dredging project over 2,500 cubic yards has to be considered for beneficial use. So historically, this stuff was just thrown away, like taken to a landfill or an upland site or something like that. But that's a resource, a valuable resource that we need. I mean, we test it to make sure it's clean and everything, but
That's
After
probably
that,
the best.
I would
like
think,
full
yeah.
of
Nutrients
nutrients and all that other stuff, I would guess.
but it's for the habitat that we create, because if you get the elevation right, you get the marsh vegetation, and that's what we're ultimately trying to do, is to create or restore valuable marsh habitat. So essentially, the program will go and apply for a permit at DMR, even though the permit's housed there, and you got to get a federal and a state permit for that. So usually the way it works, we will get the permit, and we will try to come up with funds to build the berm or the containment.
Right.
And then intermittently over time, as Jackson County or Biloxi or Harrison County, whoever's doing the dredging, they will then place that material in the beneficial use site. So we just kind of fill it opportunistically. DMR does not do any dredging. So we permit these sites and then fill them. We get a 10-year permit, and then we fill them over the life of the permit. In addition to that, so if you keep moving west from DIMR2, then you got Grand Bayou. Then we've got a permit for another about a 70-acre site. And actually the contractor's on site right now, laying it out, surveying, and they're about to start putting an earthen berm, a sand berm there. And then we will start filling that site once the construction is complete to create another 70 acres of marsh habitat.
Sweet.
But
That's
we've
pretty
got
cool.
these, yeah.
So if I was going to dredge anyway, I was going to have to haul that stuff off, right? And like you said, landfill it or something like that. So all this is adding for that is that I just need to apply with y'all for a permit to, instead of dumping it in a landfill, go to these sites that you've already got structured and ready to go.
Right. So, but if you're just dredging under your boathouse, I mean, that's a couple scoops. You know?
Right.
I mean, you can, but like I said, the 2,500 cubic yard threshold is what, and that's not that much realistically, but most of the people doing that kind of work are going to be municipalities, or we'll partner. I mean, there's some sites where we've got some federal material where they're dredging the big federal navigation channels.
That was my next question. Is who's hitting that threshold?
Right.
You just kind of nailed
right.
right there.
Jackson County does a lot of dredging. They maintain a lot of waterways.
Biloxi does it. Biloxi does a good bit as well.
Right.
Okay.
And I think even over, in the Back Bay, they've done a good bit. And then we're starting to see some, even we've got a site over in St. Louis Bay where it's right at the mouth of the Wolf River. And so Hancock County's got some applications in. The dredging hasn't commenced yet, but Diamond Head actually has a project going on right now where they're doing some dredging and placing that material into the Wolf River site.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got BU sites, beneficial use sites, in all three of the coastal counties.
Okay.
So we want to make it as easy for people to utilize the beneficial use program as we can. So we've got Greenwood Island. I was trying to think of everything that's currently accepted materials. So Greenwood Island, and then we're about to do the one at Deer Island, is starting construction relatively soon, hopefully this spring, summer. Wolf River.
All right, let me run through them.
We can get all of them.
So, and before I run through this, with the exception of the first ones I mentioned, the original one at Deer Island, DIMR1 and DIMR2, I just want to give a plug to the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality that none of these projects would have happened without their financial support.
Right.
Them being the trustee for the Deepwater Horizon funds, they've really taken. They've done a good job and worked with us in close, as very good partners to make a lot of these sites that we've all been thinking about but didn't have the money about, and they've really latched on, and they've put a lot of funding behind this. All right, so let's start in Jackson County. Currently, you have the Beardsley Lake site in the Escatawpa area that's being constructed right now. You can probably see it from the interstate or when you're coming across 613. If you look over, if you see so that site's under construction, and then you have Greenwood Island, which was a smaller site originally, but now what you see out from in between Bayou Casat and Chico Bayou, we got about a 220 acre site. And a lot of that, the industrial stuff over in that area, or use that site, whether it's Chevron, Gulf LNG, or any of the Jackson County Port Authority entities. I guess one of the big projects would be Round Island.
Yeah. Because it was about going. It was about sunk, right?
Right. So that site's about 220 acres. And that was a partnership that actually came together. That's one of the sites where there's some federal material in it. But that site was permitted for something for another partner in the industry. And then something fell through and they never filled the site. But because that permit was already in place, it just kind of, it just kind of fell into place. the Corps needed to dredge, but they didn't have the money because they were going to have to take the material offshore and dump it in what you call a ocean dredge, ODMDS, ocean dredge material disposal site. So, so DEQ paid to rebuild. It was kind of an MOA between DMR, DEQ, the port, and the Corps of Engineers. So DEQ came with some of these Deepwater Horizon funds, rebuilt the existing footprint of the permitted area with the sand, and then the Corps, when they came to dredge, they pumped it from the Pascagoula Federal Navigation Channel into that site.
Sweet.
Now we got pretty close to elevation. We can still put a little bit more material in there, and plans are underway for that. And then the next site in Jackson County is what I call Railroad Corner. So that's over in between Singing River and the Ingalls. What do you call the road that you go to Ingalls?
Okay.
Causeway or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's right in there, and that site's kind of surrounded. And this site's being permitted, so this is one of the sites that is still going through the permitting process. We had the state permit. We're waiting on the federal permit, but it kind of abuts the railroad track right there, and then there's some existing marsh right there. So we're proposing to put a containment structure at the mouth of that, and then fill in behind it. Like I said, there's a lot of industry in Jackson County, does a good bit of dredging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this just gives us more options to where, let's say somebody's pumping at Round Island or Greenwood Island, then we have another site in close proximity, which would be Railroad Corner, that they can access.
Instead of hauling it all the way offshore.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or to a landfill or something like that. Because either of those options are lost forever. If you take it and dump it in deep water, it's gone. Or if you take it to a landfill, it's gone. So this allows us multiple options to use that as a resource and to create.
Probably saving them money as well.
Yeah, I was going to say they have to pay to take it to a landfill, and they do pay a tipping fee to the state to use our site. That just helps with management of the site and everything else. But it is 30% of what it would cost to take it to a landfill if
minimum.
Yeah.
Right. At least.
What you load it up on barges and dump it, or how do we dump this out?
So on a lot of the federal project that I mentioned, those are bigger dredges. We're talking about 24, 27 inch diameter pipes, and those dredges are running 24 hours a day.
Right.
So they will pump it to the site. And even if it's a long distance, they can put a booster pump farther down the pipeline. And so they put, like, for instance, at Round Island that I mentioned, they were pumping that in the site, or the ones we're talking about at South Deer Island, the site you brought up earlier, they pumped that in.
Just spraying it, shooting it across.
Right. And so, but then on some of the other sites that I've mentioned, some of the smaller sites, like for instance, Deer Island, because the dredge source might be in the back bay in St. Martin Bayou or something. So they're going to go and mechanically excavate that on site,
right?
Put it in a hopper barge, tug it out to the site. And then now they're going to pump it from a barge that's spudded down out there. They'll pump it into the site from there. So so I covered Jackson County. So in Harrison County, we have the Deer Island site that's being built right now. We have the ability to use the lagoon. However, there's some erosion that's going on right there on the east end of that beach that's not protected.
Yeah.
But there's plans underway to have that restored as well. And then so the Deer Island site, that site also catches a lot of the West Jackson County material too, that's up in the back bay, whether it's Old Fort Bayou, stuff like that. And then in Hancock County, we have the Wolf River site in the Bay of St. Louis, and they're starting to, so past Christiane over Hancock County, Diamond Head, all that Bay St. Louis, a lot of that can go in there.
Then I guess it gives a Gulfport either way. If you're near that channel, you can go either to Hancock County or go over towards Deer Island, right?
Right. But a lot of the stuff you're talking about the Port of Gulfport.
Yeah.
So if the Port of Gulfport's dredging, that's usually the Corps maintaining that federal nav channel. They do have another option. They will use it if it's feasible and it's not cost prohibitive. They will use a site, but what they can do is they can pump. They have open water. If you look on the nav charts, I'm sure you see them. You know, the DA is what they're called, disposal areas. They will just pump into the open water, and then they're consistencies just say that they got to maintain a certain amount of relief.
Right.
So, but they got sites lined up all along the nav channel where they can pump it, and they usually pump it west, obviously, because of the way sediment
Flow
moves.
it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so what does that site look like? Like I heard you say you have to like almost berm it up, right? So that what you pump in doesn't just wash right back out. And what is the maintenance of that? You said a tipping fee to maintain that site. Like I can see like the nasty mud, wet going in there, and then how does it become usable land or a retaining wall?
So the stuff we use for the containment is usually sand.
Okay.
Because you need a sand base, obviously, so it's hard and it don't sink. And so that's where you get into the geotech part of the engineering. I mean, they kind of find, suitable bottom or something where you can create this berm. So at Deer Island, let's say we're out at the 4-foot contour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the island's eroded a good bit. I mean, and so we're going to come on that 4-foot contour and bring in sand and whatever it's permitted to. Some of them are permitted higher. This one, I think, let's say +6. And so they'll build that to +6. And I mean, obviously, however wide the base needs to be. So the maintenance, to get to your question, so let's say, I mean, this is a 10-year permit. You could have a storm or just natural erosion processes. That berm is going to start sloughing off or could get blown out. So that money that goes into that tip that we collect from tipping fees, we could go out and pay a contractor to shore that berm up or that breach up and or rebuild it to what we need. But how we control on the end of when they place material, a good rule of thumb, we're trying to get to +1 mean low or low water for the elevation for marsh. Now you're going to get some higher areas and lower areas in there because where that dredge pipe discharges, that's obviously going to be higher, and then the material flows out, which we like. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. So, and then it's kind of it's just kind of by look. You can have you got an elevation target.
It's eyeball it, huh?
Right, because and it's hard because it's going to dewater. I mean, you're going to have fluff from the water, and then they got to slurry it to pump it. So, but you can get a pretty good idea, and for these maintenance dredging projects, so material that's not virgin material, that's never like if you're not just cutting a new channel, which most of the stuff we have is maintenance. There's a seed bank already in there. We're finding, as soon as you pull that dredge pipe, we're already getting the marsh vegetation. But the elevation is a key part of it. You get the elevation right, the plant. We've had sites we've planted, and then we've had sites that we didn't plant, and
it just starts doing its thing.
It does its thing.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
It's like you build it, they will come kind of.
Right. Well, like you said, it's already seeded. If it's the not new or the maintenance material is already seeded.
The virgin material, it just hadn't been exposed to any organic matter, or it doesn't have that seed bank.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if you look on Google Earth, like you can watch the site at Deer Island that he was just the second site at Deer Island. You can kind of click back and you can see it go from being. You can see the berm, and then you can see the material going in, and then you can start to see it green up, and you can see it kind of going out like in circles almost. Yeah. And it's just areas where, finally those seeds had an opportunity to germinate and grow.
What's usually the timeline before you start seeing the little seeds pop up or the marsh? Is there a timeline? It's just different.
If you're
stuff?
in the growing season, I'm telling you, by the time they're pulling the pipe, so by the time they finish pumping and start demobilizing and stuff, when they pull the pipe out, you're already it's pretty incredible. Yeah. If your elevations are right.
Right.
And here's the thing: even if your elevations are not, Mother Nature has a self-designing capacity, so stuff's gonna shift around, continue to dewater. And then it just depends on how much sand content or clay content's in it, but it'll move around, or you'll get a storm, and it'll eventually be right.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
It sounded to me like the oil spill was a lot of funds behind most of this. Am I correct on that? Saying that? And there was a lot. Do we have the number of how much was actually affected wetlands from the oil spill?
I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
But it was probably a good bit, though, right?
Yes.
Mississippi oil on marsh. I don't think the barrier islands had a larger impact than actual coastal Mississippi. Mm-hmm. But obviously the ecosystem as a whole did have a significant impact. We had impacts to birds and fish and marine mammals and turtles and everything else. And so being able to utilize these oil spill funds to recreate and rebuild marsh is helping us make sure that ecosystem is able to bounce back. So while the actual impacts to marsh weren't as great as they were in Louisiana.
Mhm.
We're having
Still
ecosystem
got it.
services that we're able to hopefully help offset.
That's good.
One of the questions I was sitting on kind of piggybacks off of that is you mentioned the number earlier of marsh that we lose in Mississippi. What was that number again?
There's estimates that it's around 200 acres a
Okay.
year.
What's causing that? Do we know? Is it why is it disappearing?
My opinion, a lot of
Yeah.
it's just erosional. I mean, if you see that over and over and over, I mean, and then there's also some, I mean, development has impacts, field has impacts, stormwater runoff
Runoff,
can ultimately
yeah.
fill it
That
in.
makes
but
sense.
but for the most part, from what is just erosional. I mean, you got a strong fetch. I mean, before you've seen essentially with the barrier islands kind of breaking up a little bit, and we have no management control over that. That's federal. That's the national. We do have a little interest in Cat Island, but that's not part of the Gulf Islands National Seashore. They do own some of it.
So Ship Island and all that, that's
that was
all federal.
completely federal.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I mean, you had that split. So you get that when it's those barrier islands are kind of not providing that protection. It just, I mean, you get that southeast fetch and it just hits and
Yeah,
hits and
wearing it
hits. So,
out.
I mean, you can see the scarp lines if you ever go in the marsh and just see that scarp line. That's where it's just eroding and falling off. And like I said, it's a natural process a lot of the times. I mean, but usually you get, erosion and accretion. Well, when we take away that accretion, when we're taking that sediment that we're dredging up the river and throwing it away, it's not coming back down. to
Right, not
replenish
getting
that
washed
marsh.
back down. Yeah.
Right. So erosion and accretion is usually a natural process. But if you take away the accretion part of it,
You're
then
just
you
taking it
kinda,
away. Yeah.
right.
Makes sense.
That's
makes
awesome.
sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. So the other thing that's under y'all's wheelhouse, I guess, would be the invasive
Invasive
species. Is that
species.
the other one?
Yes.
Where do we start on that one?
First thing I saw with invasive species was the signs that y'all put down there, and it was the marsh grass, I guess, or spray your boat off underneath there, make sure nothing's hanging on, because a lot of people go from freshwater to saltwater or saltwater to
Are
freshwater.
those new to us, those signs? Because I remember seeing them, I think when I went to Vegas one time. What is it, Lake? Is it Mead? I don't remember. Is it? They had those signs, and I thought that was kind of strange. I'd never seen that before.
So I don't know that I think we've been putting up the signs for a while.
Yeah, they've been there
for a while.
For
Okay.
a while, but especially in the Pascagoula River Basin, giant salvinia is a really big problem. So it is a free floating fern, and this little fern grows and it multiplies really quickly. If you go in and you try to cut it up, all the little pieces that are
Makes
left
more.
makes more.
Wow.
You
It's
can't,
like
it's Medusa.
It's like the feral hog of plants.
That's
The
right.
plant-
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got giant salvinia that's a problem. Water hyacinth is a problem, and a lot of those have been introduced into the Pascagoula River system because people had like water gardens and koi ponds and stuff in their backyard. Well, you get a super high tide.
Yeah.
The tide comes in, takes these plants, gets them out. We do the best we can, and we've got some aquatic herbicides that we can spray
Right.
to try to keep waterways open. But it's kind of an ongoing battle. I don't know that we're ever going to be able to completely eradicate it. We had probably 5 or 6 years ago. We had some pretty kind of perfect storm with the weathers and winds and everything. And we really had salvinia backing up in some of the bayous.
I think I remember seeing that. Was that on the news?
Yeah.
They covered
Oh,
that on the
yeah.
news. I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So the only thing you can really do is spray them and hope for the best. Or you can't go in there and cut them, because then you're just creating more, right?
Right. So there's it, and giant salvinia specifically is a federally listed noxious weed, so you can't transport it. So it's not like you can go in and take it out and then take it to a landfill.
You can't
because
do
don't have-
anything with it.
God.
So we found, we actually invested in a duck boat that had mud motor on it,
Right.
and so that we could get into some of these shallower areas. We've had a marsh master that we rented, so we've got these herbicides that we have the proper permits through DEQ to go in and spray these aquatic herbicides, and we've got a pretty good rotation. And we go in, and the team that we've got are able to spray close to the marsh, and it's amazing. Unfortunately, when there's a salvinia outbreak, you can go and you can look at it, and then you go back the next week and you can see all the green that's come out of the marsh, and you can see the brown that they've sprayed. We don't want to spray it all at one time, because then you can have a mass die off and that create a low oxygen event.
Oh yeah.
Then you have a fish kill.
Yeah.
So it's
absolutely.
a really, really
Yeah.
delicate balance trying to determine exactly, how to do it. We want people to be able to access the waterways, obviously, that, they pay taxes to live on the water.
Right.
And, but we want to try to treat those things as responsibly as possible.
How can we as boaters, or we as anybody who gets on the water, help y'all in that situation?
So I think, like you were saying with the signs, obviously giant salvinia, when it's dried off, you can
Can't kill it.
Can't hardly kill it.
Yeah.
You can go put it in another waterway, and then all of a sudden it's over there. So washing your boat trailers off and making sure that doesn't get transported to another waterway is always helpful. And you're going to see it hanging on there. I mean, you're going to know it's there. And then we've got an email address, reportinvasive@dmr.ms.gov. So if you see something like that, call us and let us know, or send us an email. Let us know if you can snap a picture. That's obviously helpful because it's going to help us determine, what species it is and if it's one that we can go out and treat.
Okay.
Is there a picture of what it looks like? Because I wouldn't have any idea. So is that on your website?
Yes.
Okay, so I can actually go on there and look at it
Yep.
and say, okay, this is growing in my canal. It shouldn't be there.
Right. And if
Call you.
And if you got a question, we'd rather you let us know that you think you got a problem and let us go out and look at it and say we're good or it's a native or we
Right.
can't spray it.
Right.
Than to have something, extend beyond beyond what we can control.
Right.
Or what we can I guess control's the right word. I don't think we're ever going to eradicate it, but we're doing better than we were. We've, really got it kind of tuned in pretty good, and
Right.
saltwater intrusion actually helps. Salvinia doesn't like salt water, so
I
we
was
don't
gonna
necessarily see it south of 90 in the railroad tracks. It's usually up a little
Gotcha.
bit further north than that.
Gotcha.
So if you go back to where you find it on the website, under our office's Coastal Resources Management, there's an invasive species tab, and all that information is in there. Plants, animals, everything that's invasive, and the website. The email address to report the invasives too.
What so we started with the plants. What about fish wise?
So fish wise, I think like the main stuff is lionfish, and we don't really have a significant lionfish problem in Mississippi waters just because we don't necessarily have the habitat, but we do take reports on lionfish and stuff like that. We do have the invasive tiger shrimp. Yeah.
That right there is on your website. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Joey, maybe in a second could flash it to the camera. I'll see if I can't real quick try to pull it up so I could.
Yeah, but
we'll get it on there. See if I can do it. So it looks like Asian tiger shrimp, which if you've seen one of those, you definitely know what it is. It's kind of like a blackish shrimp. Then you got the giant apple snail, which I've seen that. That's the one that goes up the marsh grass and hangs on to it.
And it looks like bubble gum.
Right.
Yeah. And then lionfish, wild hogs, of course, nutria rats, which would be a great segment into where we're going next weekend, which is the nutria rat rodeo. If they're doing that, so we'll see if I can flash this up. I don't know with the camera.
Yep, got you. It's probably gonna be
Let me see if I can
straight with that being a piece of paper like that.
Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work?
I didn't see it on the website. I was looking, but I'm on the fly here.
Hold it over here.
It's just got to focus, and I don't
Go
think
to
it's focusing.
Or do you see offices, Coastal Resources Management?
Let me click one click, and we'll see if we can find it. Did it go through, Joey?
No, it's not focusing.
No.
But it's a pretty cool looking thing.
Anyway, well, I can post it later. I can post it in the comments later so we can get it.
So nutria rats, wild hogs, lionfish, of course, would be offshore more. The apple snails are here, though, right?
Yep.
We have those.
Apple snails. We're pretty sure that those came from somebody who dumped an aquarium over off the Pascagoula River. You got, everything died and all you had left was a snail. So you just, set the snail free.
Yeah.
And
thinking you're doing something good.
Right.
Thinking you're letting the little snail live. Well, apple snails have the ability to fertilize themselves.
Oh,
and
wow.
they are sexually mature really quickly after they hatch, and they are able to have multiple clutches of eggs, and they don't have any native predators in Mississippi. And so we found that apple snails are a really,
there you go. You got it.
Yeah.
a really big problem.
And they feed on the vegetation, so they can wipe it out if you don't control them.
Hogs, well, everybody knows hogs.
Yep.
They're like rabbits. Once they get going, they could wipe out pretty much anything as fast as they reproduce.
Yeah. And we've got like 43,600 acres of state-owned property. And so we're dealing with Chinese tallow, which are popcorn trees, and we're dealing with wild hogs and all kinds of other invasive species that we're dealing with on a regular basis just to stay ahead of them just a little bit.
Yeah.
So we've got some contractors, again, with funding that we've been able to get through our partnership with DEQ to go in and do some wild hog trapping on some of our coastal preserve sites where we know that we have a problem. USDA has a program that they come in and help with some aerial gunning.
Right.
So invasive species are a constant battle.
I think they mentioned over at the
At the near?
They even let them hunt, right? There's like a little season that they can hunt out there. If I wasn't mistaken.
I remember.
Yeah. I think they hunt out there for hogs or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so all coastal preserve properties are open to hunting. As long as you are hunting with the proper licenses
Right.
and you're in the, the prescribed seasons for wildlife fisheries and parks, hunt to your heart's desire. Now, the only thing we say is if you're in the city limits, or the whatever municipality, you abide by their firearm
Right.
discharge laws.
Right.
Deer Island is kind of a sticking point. Deer Island's technically in the city limits of Biloxi. Biloxi
Right.
doesn't allow you to discharge firearms. So duck hunters, you're going to have to talk to Biloxi.
Yeah.
See if they'll let you.
I've seen it done, and I've heard it was right, and I heard it was wrong. So I don't.
See if they'll
I don't
carve
know.
you out a little
Yeah,
exception, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to talk to
Sitting in
somebody
jail,
else.
like, what happened, man? I discharged a weapon in Biloxi, but I was on Deer Island.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah.
What is there anything else on y'all's horizon that we can let the people know about? That's a lot. We covered a lot there,
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm
Just gonna
good.
keep redoing the coast, building
Yeah.
some more burns, building some more marsh, and getting rid of those invasive species. Right.
Yeah, and I think, ultimately at the end of the day, we're here to help. We want to, if you think you've got invasive species, let us know. If you want to build a pier or a dock at your house, or you want to dredge, call us.
Right.
Mhm.
We sit down and talk to people every day. We've got staff we always have somebody from the permitting staff in the office to answer the phone and to sit down and meet with people. You don't have to have an appointment if you just want to come in and sit down and talk to somebody. If you have an idea or your question, that's why we do what we do.
Right.
Right.
We're here to help the public, and we want to help you get your goal, whatever your goal is, build your project. We want to help you do it the right way. If you come in and you're like, this is what I want to do, and it's like, man, I don't know if we can permit that, but hey, this will still get you that goal.
Mhm.
We just got to do it a little bit different.
Yeah.
And we really do try to make sure that I don't know. I think I've been at DMR for 19 years in the Office of Coastal Resources Management. I started out in wetlands permitting, moved to coastal preserves in my current position now. And I don't think I can count on one hand the number of projects that we've actually denied because we couldn't find an option.
Right.
Right.
So,
Work around it.
Yeah, we're in the customer service business.
Yeah.
We tell our staff that all the time, answer the phone, listen to the question, do your best to answer it. If you can't answer it, take a message. We'll find the answer and call them back.
Yeah.
That's why one of the things we enjoy about doing these episodes is getting the message out like that for to our audience, that's
People
local
who don't know like
here.
me. Yeah.
Exactly, to let them know what y'all do and what y'all can and can't do, and how to, like you said, if we can't make it happen this way, we'll try to make it happen another way. So well, thank y'all for stopping by.
Absolutely.
It was a great conversation. I knew it was going to be cool. That was real fun. I want to thank everybody for watching on the live. Joe, you mentioned we'll be at the Nutria rodeo
next weekend.
next weekend. So we'll maybe go live from there too, so y'all stay tuned from that. If you don't have the Brownwater Banter app, go download it on your phone. It's free in the App Store and Google Play. You can see all of our content there, watch the YouTubes there, listen to the audio podcast there, all in the app, and it's got even a radio station inside of it too. So
super
if
cool.
y'all keep tuning in, we'll